Hey, what is up, everybody?
Howdy, and welcome back to Mile Higher Podcast, episode 334. And boy, do we have a wild episode for you guys today. And we had one last week. I think I had pretty much the same intro, but we alluded that this week we're taking it up another level. This shit is whack beyond words.
This is a mile higher. It's the most crazy, bizarre, confusing.
Yeah. This is like, this one-ups the Love is One cult, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Just as far as like how confusing and
your brain will hurt.
Yes, my brain still
this.
hurts. I have been over this so many times trying to understand. There's still so much of it I don't understand, but Ian has really become an expert as much as he could be on this topic.
Ian.
And,
Ian.
Yeah, seriously, thank you for your service. This was a lot.
You know, I'm happy to be here.
Are you though?
I've lost.
Don't lie to the people.
Like, I've lost relationships. I've lost
Countless hours of sleep.
Brain cells.
straight up. Last
Years
night
of your life.
I was in bed thinking like, "Fuck the basilisk."
Fuck. This is seriously so confusing, you guys. And I promise, well, you know what? You're going to be confused. I can't promise we're going to be able to explain it all because we're all still confused. I think anyone that would look into this topic would be. Josh does have some experience with the tech world to some degree, so he gets it a little bit more.
I get where it's the origins of it are, where they take the philosophies and concepts and ideologies. I'm clueless on. But if you haven't heard of these guys yet, you likely will start hearing about them, is my guess, in the news.
Yeah, I'm surprised this hasn't gotten more coverage.
But up in the New England area, people are definitely starting to hear about the Zizians, which hard to really describe what they are, who they are, but
AI obsessed,
vegan people,
cult.
Yeah, who've turned their ideologies into a cult and have murdered people.
It's quite sad.
Very recently, as of January 20th, 2025, a Border Patrol agent, David Maland, was shot and killed during a traffic stop with some members of this group. And
he's not the only one.
No, and there's 8 deaths linked to the Zizians at this point. And this is going to be a very long, deep dive into who these people are, how they came about. And in order to understand this cult's ideologies, you really have to understand the origins of them and of the people who sort of started all of this. Because if we just jumped into the crimes, which a lot of coverage out there on YouTube just kind of jumps into the deaths. But in order to understand how it all came about and why they're doing what they're doing, it's important to kind of understand what their philosophies are, where it originated from. Which,
even
to some extent.
Yeah, there is no understanding why they did what they did at the end of the day. Truly. But, we can try to make sense of it as much as possible.
No, because it's contradicting literally their own beliefs. So, but yeah, we're going to be talking about a lot of technical AI terms, a lot of computer programming lingo.
Some fanfics in there. Harry Potter's involved.
Fantasy. Yeah, fantasy. It's like fantasy meets AI meshed together.
Steven Universe.
And then you throw in like altruism and long-termism and all these other philosophies into the mix and kind of stir it all up in a pot.
Techno-rationalism.
And it's a cluster.
Yeah.
So
it's wild. So just try your best to follow along as much as possible. It might be a good episode to like do a little rewind here and there and like try to understand it as we go. I promise. Well, I guess I can't really promise, but by the end, I think it'll make a little more sense to you. And then we'll be getting into the crimes. But it is quite a long journey to get to that point. So just hang in there. I promise it's going to be a huge story and it is really fascinating and just bizarre. So
it's still unfolding too.
Right. Yes, that's another good point. With it still unfolding, by the time this episode goes up, there could be new information. We will pin that in either the pinned comment, description box, show notes, wherever you're consuming the episode. So yeah, we have prepared a little bit of a disclaimer too, because before we head into this, there's a couple of things you got to understand, okay? So the information in this case is extremely fast moving and the digital footprint of these people is very dense. There's very little information about some of those that are involved, and then a lot of information, thousands of words on others. So if there happens to be something that we've missed or something new that has happened in the case, like we said, we'll add it to the show notes later. But we had to condense this to some degree because you could really sit here and talk about this for like 12 fucking hours, and we're not going to be doing that, obviously. But the information regarding this case comes from Ziz's blog.
Who is the leader of the Zizians, without, again, not officially the leader per se, but is at the head of this group.
Yeah, yep. And we're also going to be talking about the broader rationalist community in Silicon Valley. And in our opinion, the philosophy surrounding the beliefs of those involved is purposely dense and confusing. And if you find our interpretation of the philosophy to be incorrect, we frankly don't care. I mean, you could really interpret this however you choose to. So this is just kind of our take on it and how we best understood this nonsense. So we'll get into the reasons why it's written in such a dense style. But yeah, I don't think there's really anyone out there who understands anything. I don't even think these people, the cult themselves, understand what they're talking about. And most people involved in this case are trans or have a unique gender expression. And since a lot of the reporting on the case, dead names and misgenders those involved, we're going to do our best to try and get everything right. The only person whose birth name that we will actually use at one point for legal purposes is Ziz's. When we get there, that'll make more sense. But if we mess up at any point, please know that, we're not purposely trying to disrespect anyone's gender identity. We very much respect and support the trans community 1000%. So just keep that in mind. It is difficult. And there are people throughout the case as well who also misgender them, but we have to quote them. But those people, they didn't mean it in a malicious way either. But with all that housekeeping out of the way, it's best to get into things starting with the rationalist community in Silicon Valley, which has become sort of a religion for many people in the tech industry in the Bay Area.
Yeah, we really are going to do our best to try to describe what these things mean in layman's terms, because I think most of us may have never even heard of rationalism before or understand.
I didn't hear about
any of these things.
Yeah, a lot of this was all new to me, and I still, like I said, I am lost.
So hang in there with us. We'll be there every step of the way.
We'll try to learn together.
This might be one too you got to take a break from, come back to, listen
snack,
to a few times.
Do a little meditation, deep breathe, whatever you got to do.
Yeah, we certainly did. So here we go. Here we go. So going back to 2000, AI researcher and ethics writer Eliezer Yudkowsky founded the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, which we'll just call MIRI for short. Eliezer had become worried about the future of AI and how super intelligent computer program could act unethically if the wrong people designed it, which is a concept we've talked about on the show before in many conversations about AI and where it's headed. So, there's groups of people out there that spend a lot of time on this subject because, yeah, we should all be worried if AI technology falls into the wrong hands.
Mm-hmm. Or becomes sentient.
Yes. In 2006, the Institute received funding from Facebook investor and blood drinker Peter Thiel, who we mentioned in a previous episode, to host the annual Singularity Summit to discuss the future and risks of AI. However, it's important to note that MIRI itself wasn't designing programs or working on new AI models. They were more interested in philosophic talks surrounding the singularity and the ethics involved in creating a machine that would be more powerful than humanity itself. And just to make it clear, in case you don't remember, the singularity is the concept of a hypothetical future in which technological growth is out of control and basically outdoes all of us, all of our human capabilities. In general, Eliezer and MIRI believe this would be achieved through artificial intelligence.
And we do have an episode on the singularity. It's probably years old, though, and kind of out of date, but if you're interested.
Yeah, I'd love to go revisit some of the predictions made in that one, because I think they said singularity was either late 2030s or 2045. Some reason sticks out to me. But this guy, Eliezer, had become so worried about the implications of the singularity that he urged MIRI's official stance to ban the development of future AI programs. And while trying to create the ethics for a future superintelligent AI software, Eliezer became interested in human beings' ethics. Eliezer, along with Nate Soares, who was then the president of the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, came up with a concept known as functional decision theory, in which, quote, it says that agents should treat one's decision as the output of a fixed mathematical function that answers a question. which output of this very function would yield the best outcome. We're going to talk about computer brain quite a bit. So taking, the human brain and let's convert it into a computer brain where it doesn't think through emotions. It's all rational.
Neuralink, baby.
Exactly. It says that all human decisions should be treated like a computer algorithm or a flowchart in which the person making the decision needs to consider the best outcome, regardless of what that means for the current decision. This feeds into long-termism, an idea within effective altruism that essentially states that the best decision is the one that does the most good in the future. Fuck right now, it's all about the future.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind because it's very important as we get further along and we start talking about the Zizians. But for instance, Sam Bankman-Fried, who scammed millions of dollars from users at Crypto.com and is currently serving a 25-year sentence, justified the crime by saying his future wealth could be used to give effectively back to the people, fulfilling effective altruism's other main goal, which is this concept, earning to give. Effective altruism, long-termism, and functional decision theory came from the same beliefs in Silicon Valley and would lead to Eliezer's next philosophy, known as rationalism. Now, before we explain rationalism, it's important to note that all of these thought leaders within the TESCREAL umbrella, which includes transhumanism, extopianism, singularitism, cosmism, rationalism, effective altruism, and long-termism, and ism, it goes on and on and on. All these people are thinking way too hard, in my opinion. But one of rationalism's founding texts is a several hundred-page Harry Potter fan fiction that was written by Eliezer himself called Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. It's a bigger than the actual series itself. But just so you can get just a grasp of what the hell this is.
A little taste.
Here's a little excerpt, okay? It reads, quote, "The boy coughed. 'No,' he said, just as Hermione started to drink. He said, 'I'd like you to help me take over the universe.' Hermione finished her drink and lowered the can. 'No, thank you. I'm not evil.' The boy looked at her in surprise as though he'd been expecting some other answer. 'Well, I was speaking a bit rhetorically,' he said, 'in the sense of the Baconian project, not political power. The affecting of all things possible and so on. I want to conduct experimental studies of spells, figure out underlying laws, bring magic into the domain of science, merge the wizarding and muggle worlds, raise the entire planet's standard of living, move humanity centuries forward, discover the secret of immortality, colonize the solar system, explore the galaxy, and most importantly, figure out what the heck is really going on here, because all of this is blatantly impossible.' Who wants to read that book?"
Not me.
So yeah, there's a whole series by Eliezer, but it's easy to laugh at this, but it points to something central to the rationalist philosophy and eventually Ziz's philosophy. Pop culture, baby. Ziz's blog contains hundreds of links to Wikipedia. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've been on Wikipedia.
Man, I'm known on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
You're known?
I'm not known. No.
It's a great place for fan fiction of all the, lots of different stories, but including Twilight fan fiction, Steven Universe clips. And this serves as an entry point for many into rationalism and eventually Zizianism. But slow down, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Back to Eliezer. So Eliezer published this Harry Potter fan fiction on his forum called Less Wrong in 2009. And Less Wrong would eventually create the Center for Applied Rationality, or CFAR, in 2012. While MIRI, if you remember, that institute was focused on giving human ethics to computer programs, CFAR was more interested in treating human ethics and decisions like algorithms. Really fun stuff. Really interesting, right? Less Wrong would soon be filled with thousands of posts from this rationalist community, with many posters coming from Silicon Valley, since both CFAR and MIRI were based in Berkeley. The general idea behind rationalism was that all human ethics, including relationships, politics, and the general social contract, should be rewritten using functional decision theory and quote-unquote rational thought, which this attracted many political extremists, notably those with far-right politics, and it radicalized many other users as now using this quote-unquote rational thought for every social norm, law, crime, and everything else was up for debate. However, since many of these users were enmeshed into Silicon Valley's tech scene, the conversation mainly focused on technology, AI, and of course, the singularity. But one of the most famous posts to Less Wrong and the origin of the term info hazard, if that is a part of any of our vocabularies, likely not, is a post known as Roko's Basilisk, which you heard Ian, he's laying awake at night thinking about the Basilisk. So what the hell is Roko's Basilisk? Well, this user, Roko, had readers envision a future where an all-knowing AI that ushers in the singularity has an evil god in the form of a basilisk. So purely terrifying. This program knows who brought it into being and punishes those who either tried to stop it from being made or even just those who knew of its future and did nothing to help create it.
So if you're listening to this, all of you know.
You've been info-affected.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, why the post became known as an info hazard. Because as just by learning about its possibility, you're now culpable in its creation. So you can try to stop it and be tortured, do nothing and be tortured, or help create it and therefore be responsible for the torture. Pick your poison.
Yeah, there's no good option there.
No, there's no good option. Now, to people not in the rationalist community, this all sounds pretty wacky, right? But as Brace Belden on TrueAnon put it, Roko's Basilisk and info hazards in general are just, quote, chain emails, or those old Facebook posts that say, share with 5 people or else you get bad luck.
Those are like making a resurface on Instagram stories.
Yeah,
Now it's so annoying.
And I fall for them.
You always do it.
Because I'm really superstitious.
God.
So it'll be like post the last picture in your camera roll or bad,
you do
bad
that.
luck in February. I'm like, if I don't do it, then it eats at me.
Damn, that's rough.
Yeah.
That's an
annoying.
info hazard.
I get pissed. Or like on TikTok, it'll be like, use this sound or bad luck next month. So then I have to use the sound and just save it as a draft.
Does it count if it's only a draft?
I don't know, Kendall. Okay.
I don't know.
This time of year, it's freezing outside, and all cats are indoor cats. You know, all of our cats have always been indoor cats. And one issue we've had with our cats is just, with 3 of them, a lot of waste is produced and a lot of smell is produced. But since we switched to Pretty Litter, the smell is no more. But the best thing about Pretty Litter is the fact that this crystal litter lets you know about possible health situations that are going on with your cat. I just had a recent vet appointment with my cats, and I found out that 2 of my cats are geriatric at this point. So they're getting up there in age, and it's more important than ever to know what's going on with their health. The great thing about Pretty Litter is it gives me some peace of mind because it changes color to indicate early signs of potential illnesses in my cat, like urinary tract infections, kidney issues, and more. And my vet even said that kidney issues are the very first thing to crop up as cats get older. So it's great that I have Pretty Litter to let me know that it's time to see the vet again if something pops up. Plus, Pretty Litter ships right to my door. I don't think about it, never run out. I'm not lugging huge boxes home from the store. It's just right there when I need it. Pretty Litter's non-clumping formula also traps those nasty odors and moisture. It's ultra absorbent, it's lightweight, it's low dust, which is great for my asthma, and 1 6-pound bag works for up to a month. I'm a big fan of Pretty Litter. I'll never go back to any other litter. My house used to be so messy with the other stuff. Pretty Litter is where it's at. Indoor cats and indoor humans agree. Pretty Litter helps my house smell fresh and clean. Go to prettylitter.com/milehard to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. That's prettylitter.com/milehard to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. prettylitter.com/milehigher. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details. Back to Roko's Basilisk. It broke a lot of people's brains in the rationalist community, so much so that Eliza banned the post from the forum because probably people were scattering, they're probably running away like, oh my God, I don't want to think about this. It's terrifying. So they ban it from the forum. And to this day, you can only view posts explaining the Basilisk, not the original post. But Roko's Basilisk became so popular and well known that even our Vice President Elon Musk became obsessed.
Excuse me, First Lady.
First Lady, thank you. Elon Musk became obsessed, which, does that surprise any of us?
No.
That Elon Musk would be interested in Roko's Basilisk. Another little tidbit about Elon Musk is that him and Grimes began their romantic relationship by discussing the Basilisk.
It's so romantic.
Oh, yeah. And Elon himself embodies many of the ideals outlined in rationalism, long-termism, and effective altruism. But another person who is deeply affected by Roko's Basilisk was a young computer programmer and contributor to that forum, Less Wrong, known as Ziz. Let's dive into who is Ziz, because the story from here on out really revolves around this individual name, Ziz, hence the Zizians.
Yes. So Ziz was born as Jack Amadeus Lasota and grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska. Now, very little is actually known about Ziz, her family dynamics, or what she was like as a child. All the information here comes from a single Boston Globe article, which we aren't sure where they source their information from, so take it sort of with a grain of salt. And also Ziz's own Tumblr, which is called sinceriously.fyi. And her blog was taken down shortly after its final post, but you can still view it through various mirrors and the Internet Archive.
Which Ian did and spent a lot of time.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Hats off to you.
2
buddy.
weeks.
Now, it's very important to note that her blog and early writings about herself are embellished and dense. So, again, take any quotes from her with a grain of salt. Ziz comes from a long line of computer scientists. Her father, Daniel, was a professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, specializing in artificial intelligence, of course. And her grandfather, Robert, was a professor at Salem State University in Massachusetts, although it's unclear what his focus was. However, their family had long been mired in legal scandals and criminal activity. Robert Lasota had been convicted of molesting his younger daughter, Ziz's aunt, in the 1980s. However, this conviction was eventually thrown out due to an unknown piece of evidence reviewed by an appellate court. None of Ziz's family members have ever commented on her current case. Ziz was described as, quote, a precocious child by her former middle school teacher. She was obsessed with Star Wars, the video game StarCraft, and struggled to regulate her emotions. According to this former teacher, Ziz often broke out into tantrums and disrupted class. However, even from an early age, Ziz spent a lot of time on the computer. While in middle school, she and a group of other students were able to hack their way through the school's district firewall to award large payouts to teachers they like and cut payments to those they didn't.
That's kind of iconic.
Yeah, that one's baller.
Not really, but
I mean,
it's a little awesome.
it's just the fact that they could do that is fucking crazy.
Yeah. I wonder if you could do something like that today. Probably not. I'm sure they have it locked down to some degree.
I think it probably depends on the school district.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Some of these are glued together. They're barely working.
God. Yeah. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know from personal experience, because I have people close to me who work in school districts at a high level, that, because, I have a family member who runs a school district and they actually got hacked.
Yeah, recently.
A huge hack happened, and
I forgot that.
they had to hire an outside security company to come in and audit their systems and everything. So
they were all locked out.
Yeah, it was ransomware.
Yeah.
So they had ransomware where it encrypts basically all the students' files and personal data and stuff, and they had to actually pay the ransom in order to get it unlocked, and then they beefed up their systems. But yeah, and school districts are notoriously underfunded. So
and even more now.
So yeah, so it's hard to build good cybersecurity around a school district, but I would say, and I also did a little bit of this. I used to be able to get around the filters and stuff in school as well. There was a couple different tricks, so it's not that hard. I don't want to give her a ton of credit. It was that hard to potentially get around the school's firewall, especially at this time period. But yeah, if you're techie, you could probably figure it out pretty easily most of the time.
Yeah, I just wonder if you could, in today's day and age, cut salaries and
that would be that would be more difficult to do for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, eventually Ziz graduated from her father's college, the University of Alaska Fairbanks, with a degree in computer science. At this point, Ziz's career seemed very promising. She got her degree and completed an internship with NASA, although it's unclear what her duties were there. However, following the internship, she was unsure about what to do next. Grad school had been an option, but Ziz had grown tired of school and wanted to get involved with the Rationalist and effective altruism community in the Bay Area, as they all seemed to have flourishing careers. Plus, she liked the group's conversations regarding ethics, the singularity, and esotericism. In 2012, Ziz began posting on Less Wrong herself and contacted Anna Salomon, the head of CFAR. She wrote of the experience on her blog, sinceriously, I always struggle with that, saying, quote, in 2012, as I first started reading up on EA, which is effective altruism, and X risk, and starting to donate to Miri after I had first decided to side with Team Human, not Team Negative Utilitarian. Sorry, whenever I'm going to be reading Ziz quotes, just don't expect much from me. It's just beyond, my brain doesn't work the way hers does, okay? She says, which I saw in some ways as more aligned than Team Human. I responded to a public invitation to discuss how to make outcomes to the singleton better from Anna Salomon. I asked her whether I should try and alter course and do research or continue to fork of my pre-existing life plan, earn to give as a computer engineer, but retrain and try to do research directly instead. This is a snippet from her blog, and it should get you used to her writing style, which is dense, full of jargon, and pretty confusing.
But let's be clear, at this time, Ziz's main goal was to earn to give, which if you look this up on Google, it's basically going after a high-paying career, to earn a high income to give back a portion of your income to charity.
Which sounds great.
Yeah.
Great in theory, right?
Right. And this is one of the staples of effective altruism. And she wanted to know what would be the more rational way of accomplishing that goal. She said that she had, quote, irrational attachment to the idea of grad school and thought that completing independent research might help her better achieve that long-term goal. Anna told Ziz that going to grad school is actually the best course of action she could take. She told Ziz that while in grad school, she could develop a startup, maybe find a co-founder, and then drop out when they found some investors. So Ziz did exactly that and spent a few years pursuing her graduate degree. However, Ziz struggled to find a partner and just dropped out of school in 2015. This might be surprising given Ziz's previous ability to hack through a school district's firewall and complete an internship at NASA. However, like many in the rationalist community, her involvement on the Less Wrong forum seems to have contributed to her caring less about technology and more about the philosophy. That and her startup ideas were pretty bad. Here's one that she wrote about on her blog. Quote, prostitution was illegal, but pornography was legal. Both involved people being paid to have sex. The difference was both people were being paid, or there was a camera or something. So what if I created Uber for finding actors, film crews, film equipment for making pornography? Would that let me de facto legalize prostitution and take a cut via network effects? An Uber-like rating system for sex workers and clients would probably be a vast improvement as well. Ziz rationalized that maybe if she were better at the networking, she might have found a partner for her startup idea, but ultimately decided that the main culprit was just that grad school was just, quote, not a good place to find startup co-founders. She wrote of this time in 2015, quote, I had in 2015 dropped out of grad school because it sucked and spent about 7 months working on an indie video game, which seemed to be teaching me a lot more about software engineering. And there we have a screenshot of the game that she was working on.
Looks riveting.
Yes. So while she was working on this indie video game, and it's likely Iggy for Remar Games, I believe that's the name of the video game, Ziz began trying to get in-person work in the Bay Area since she thought that, quote, proximity to the tech industry, which I consider sort of my destiny, proximity to startups since one of my main guesses about how I could best contribute to saving the world was earning to give via startups. Again, there's this focus on earning to give that we talked about earlier, but she adds a bit of her own emerging philosophy there, that she ultimately wants to save the world.
A hero. So it took Ziz about 5 months to find a job in the Bay Area, which she said was because of her lack of grad school degree, focus on engineering, and the fact that Remar used an unfamiliar video game engine compared to most other companies. However, it's fair to assume that at this point, Ziz hadn't really kept up with the quickly developing world of computer science. She may have been a gifted coder in middle school and during her college internship, but the field may have started to outpace her a bit. But she worked for another video game developer and moved to the Bay Area in January of 2016. However, this was cut short. Ziz wrote, quote, the first startup, after other dishonesty, fired me after 4 days after I moved to the Bay Area for them because I said I couldn't implement a payout system for their game, ... in 2 days. And because I walked out of the office after 8 hours of work, they seemed upset. Where are you going? Half an hour later, calling me to say I was fired. Ziz's parents then gave her 1 month of rent as a, quote, gift. and she continued to work for various startups such as Zenefits and BeMinder. However, these two fell through. She wrote, quote, "I was honest when interviewers asked me what I wanted out of life. I found another job at another dishonest startup, which kept demanding that I work unpaid overtime," talking about how other employees just always put 40 hours on their timesheet no matter what. And this exemplary employee over here worked 12 hours a day, and he really went the extra mile and got the job done. And they needed me to really go the extra mile and get the job done. When I refused to work longer than 40 hours a week, they did not renew my 3-month contract to work there, then offered by-the-job contracts designed to decrease my pay per hour. In negotiating over these, my manager lied and said he had a constraint in how much to spend from HR. I asked HR, and they said he had no such constraint. I confronted him with this and made a counteroffer based on my estimate about how much he'd gain from the software being done. And he said he was no longer interested in contracting with me.
Which, as some of us know, and if you've ever seen the show Silicon Valley, which is such a great show, by the way.
We mentioned it last
such
week,
a good,
too.
yeah, I know. And it gives you, but it just gives you such a good sort of like idea. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's exaggerated, but
Mm-hmm.
of what sort of the Silicon Valley tech startup looks like.
It's so funny. Please watch it.
It's a great show. But they are notorious for overworking their employees, especially new hires like Ziz. While it's likely that this part of the story is true, the more important focus should be that Ziz's early time in the Bay Area made her hate the broader startup industry. And it really sowed this deep distrust between her and her peers, many of whom were also present in the rationalist and effective altruism communities. What's important here to know is that her inability to work in the tech industry really fueled some of those earliest ideas about her own philosophy. After she got fired from the various startups, Ziz was introduced to the, quote, Gervais principle by a rationalist. And yes, Gervais as in Ricky Gervais from The Office. And the Gervais principle essentially looks like this. Basically, it's like a pyramid structure. You have sociopaths at the top, clueless in the middle, and losers at the bottom. And this is the company hierarchy. And at this point, Ziz was one of the losers, being bossed around by sociopaths and clueless people. And if she wanted to be successful and complete her goal of earning to give, she'd have to become a sociopath, which for her, as a lifelong Star Wars nerd, meant becoming a Sith Lord. Here's a quote from her blog post titled My Journey to the Dark Side. Buckle up. It reads, reject morality. Never do the right thing because it's the right thing. Never even think that concept or ask that question unless it's to model what others will think. And then, always in quotes and treat it as radioactive. Make the source of sentiment inside you that you made you learn to care about what was the right thing to express itself some other way. But even the line between that sentiment and the rest of your values is a mind control virus inserted by a society of flesh-eating monsters to try and turn you against yourself and toward their will. Reject that concept. Drop every concept tainted by their influence. The Sith do what they want deep down. They remove all obstructions to that and express their true values, all obstructions to what is within flowing to without. So, yeah.
So, yeah.
They're much like Eliza. There is this blend, this mishmash of fantasy literature brought into these philosophical ideas, and to model your way of thinking after a Sith Lord is very interesting. To say the least, but trying to like bridge the gap there. But not only does she do that metaphorically, but she also legitimately started embodying the Sith lifestyle by always wearing black robes around. And as mentioned in the quote, flesh-eating monsters, this was about people who ate meat. In her philosophy, veganism was the only true non-evil way of eating. And those who ate meat or animal products went against her long-term goal of saving the world. A former rationalist who knew Ziz from the community said, quote, Ziz is a wannabe Sith Lord. So on top of all that, Ziz's living situation was extremely tense. While we can't verify what she said in her blog, her roommate was also her landlord. And this landlord, according to Ziz, would harass her for her trans identity, veganism, and would masturbate in the living room openly. The two of them called the cops on one another constantly, And while, again, this can't be verified, the cops would always side with the landlord and once almost charged Ziz with domestic harassment for turning off the breaker box from her room.
So really the important takeaway here is her deep distrust of law enforcement, landlords, and just authority figures in general. In her now building philosophy, they would come to represent, quote, evil people, blocking her from the ultimate goal of saving the world. After this living experience, Ziz went on to live in a rationalist group home. However, this didn't last long either. One of the roommates was, according to Ziz, transphobic and disrespected her veganism, and Ziz couldn't take the living arrangement for very long. Eventually, Ziz started just renting a, month-long Airbnb situation while looking for work, and she said that she had been involved in months-long interview processes with Google, but again, this is unconfirmed. I don't know if I even believe it.
Yeah, I don't. I think she probably had one interview with Google and then had to tell her parents, like, no, they're just keeping me off because they were paying her rent.
Yeah.
Google is picky.
Yeah. While big tech firms like Google do take months to vet employees, they don't often just let them, quote, slip through the cracks after multiple interviews without any communication. On top of that, it seemed like Ziz wasn't looking for work outside of the Google opportunity. She began to think that after a few months of moving between Airbnbs, she'd just move back home to Alaska.
Which would have been a good idea.
Yeah, that would have been
just
good.
Go home and
stay there. And stay off the internet. Anyway, however, Ziz had attended rationalist lectures throughout her time in the Bay. She had tried to network and socialize at these events and parties, but she was either put off by their response to veganism, transphobia, or the fact that she dressed like a Sith.
I think the Sith part
That's
would
probably
be the first thing everybody's like,
The heck?
Yeah. And again, like, at these types of events, I imagine there wouldn't be that much transphobia.
Well, that I honestly is weird because there are certainly a lot of trans people who were involved in CFAR and Miri, but a lot of them went on to become involved with Ziz. So therefore, a lot of them repeat her claims of transphobia, but they're also kind of like friends with Ziz.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know how much. I'm certain to a degree there was some.
Oh, I mean, around
there is everywhere.
Everywhere,
right?
yeah, of course.
But I think most of it is coming from Ziz and then eventually other future Zizians.
I mean, I just go back to people quoted as saying she was a wannabe Sith Lord.
Yeah.
Like, that to me says she was really embodying this idea of a Sith Lord, and the way that she carried herself at these events was as such.
Yeah.
And that's going to be like, this is
that was the part.
This is not Comic-Con, right? I mean, maybe it is. I've never been to CFAR or Miri, and maybe it is like that, but I likely not. So I'm assuming people are like, she's rolling in with these dark robes on.
Yep.
Like, at the wrong event, guys.
But she still liked the way that the rationalists talked about human ethics as if they were computer programs that could be uninstalled and reprogrammed like a line of code. So that was when, at some point in 2016, Ziz met Gwen Danielson at a rationalist party. With Gwen, Ziz would not only find a new living situation, but started building her own Bay Area philosophy and would soon have followers of her own. Now, Ziz and Gwen immediately hit it off at the rationalist party, and Gwen asked Ziz if she wanted to stay the night on the sailboat that she had been living on, anchored in the Encinal Basin outside of Oakland. And according to Ziz, Gwen had sworn a, quote, oath of vengeance against death after her neighbor's cat died when she was growing up.
I mean, yeah, fuck death, man.
Yeah, no, fuck death.
Yeah.
And yeah, don't fuck with cats. I completely agree. I don't know the circumstances around this cat's death. I mean, could the cat have just died of old age?
It's not expanded upon.
Yeah.
That's the quote. That's it.
Could have been anything. Okay. Well, the neighbor's cat died when she was growing up, so she had sworn to a, quote, of vengeance against death after that. So she had investigated the paranormal, fearful of ordinary objects that had been, quote, munchkinned, another term from Elizer's Harry Potter fan fiction. Is your brain melting yet? Mine is.
It's just like so much fucking like Munchkin is like that's a D&D thing. Like that's mimicry based. It's all just D&D in real life crap.
Dungeons and Dragons. For
Yes,
people
yeah,
who
my
know.
bad, my bad.
Is that like bewitched or hexed or something? Like
Munchkin, that's cute.
Munchkin is Elizer's term for mimicry, which is just like, you know, in D&D it's always, or in Dark Souls, if there's a chest, sometimes you open it and it tries to eat you, and they're like, oh no, it's a mimic. That's kind of what Gwen is saying.
So she's fearful of ordinary objects because of this Munchkin concept.
Yeah.
See, I would have thought that Munchkin meant like shrunk, like turned into a little Munchkin.
Well, the Munchkin, the actual word, I think means like cute, right? Like
that's what I call her daughter. I call her just Munch, but...
Informal term used to describe a small person, especially one who's endearing. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
But Gwen also explained that she was otherkin, specifically dragonkin.
Hell yeah.
And that after the singularity occurred, she would shed her human skin and turn into an actual dragon.
Fuck yeah. Imagine actually believing that. Kind of fun to like...
I mean, I like to believe in dragons, but I don't think I'm a dragon.
I don't know, baby. You're my dragon.
Oh,
Aww.
That's cute. Weird.
It's not weird. Okay, fine.
I'm going to get a dragon tattooed on me then.
You should.
I've got a dragon tattooed.
You do.
Big gigantic.
Oh, yeah, you do on your back. You want to show it?
No. Yeah. We maybe overlay it, but
is it finished yet?
No, unfortunately.
Still working on it. Yeah.
This weekend it'll be the end.
Oh, dude, I'm finishing my half sleeve tomorrow. Anyway,
tattoo siblings.
Distractions. I've got a lot of dragon on the brain because of the Blake Lively situation.
Yes.
You know, that's why I call Josh my dragon.
Right.
Like Taylor Swift is Blake's dragon. You know,
of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyways, yet again, here's that importance placed on fantasy within the rationalist community, especially those more on the fringes like Ziz and Gwen, who were fashioning their own philosophies. So this is what Ziz said about her initial meeting with Gwen. Quote, they seemed to think animals were moral patients, had determination and actual course-changing epistemology. Okay, I like this person. I told them that if they could be turned to the dark side, they would make a powerful ally. They were into this and asked me questions to try and learn out my mental tech. This would go on for quite some time. Now, another important note here is that all rationalists develop and use their own quote-unquote mental tech, which at first, you know, given the whole computer side of this whole freaking story, you know, we think of it as actual technology that they're developing for the brain. But in reality, mental tech is just a term they use to describe different techniques for understanding rationalist concepts and their own personal ethics. And Ziz had been discussing hers on the blog for a few months at this point, and Gwen had been developing her own, which would become central to her beliefs very soon. Gwen asked Ziz if she'd like to live on a sailboat with her for around $16 a day. Ziz agreed, and so it was about half of what she paid to live in an Airbnb month to month. However, boat living, as you can imagine, wasn't very easy. For one, Gwen owned a Rawson 30, which is a 1960s sailboat that wasn't exactly made to be lived in, let alone house two people. If you're watching, here's the interior of a Rawson 30. It's not the exact one that they lived in, but it gives you an idea of just how small this living space would have been.
This sounds like hell. I cannot imagine.
Yeah. There's tons of creators out there who post like sailboat content where they sail.
They live on it.
Yeah, and they live on it, but it's usually there is a couple, but I don't know how big their boat is. Maybe they have a bigger sailboat.
Yeah, I've seen, yeah.
But
for some people, it looks like a great lifestyle, but this situation...
Well, especially somebody that you don't know that well.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of trying to figure out and see where they stand versus like a married couple or a boyfriend, girlfriend would be a little bit easier.
Lot of those people set it up to be lived on. This was not set up for anyone to live on, let alone two of them.
Well, and they're also still trying to do their computer programming, which proved to be very difficult on this sailboat, as Ziz said. She said, there's no room for my 3-monitor setup.
Fuck.
Unfortunately. So it basically kept her from being able to get into this programming flow state for 9 hours that she was used to. That and Gwen talked to herself constantly. Ziz wrote about how this made it nearly impossible to sleep, but if she interrupt Gwen during her discussions with herself, it would ruin Gwen's entire day. Also during this time, Ziz became obsessed with Roko's Basilisk to the point that the concept had become debilitating. Ziz wrote on her blog, quote, later thoughts about Basilisk came back and the epistemic masochism subagent started up again and advanced one more click. If what I cared about was sentient life and was willing to go to hell to save everyone else, why not just send everyone else to hell if I didn't submit? Oh no, don't think about it. Don't let it demoralize me. That awful feeling. That's a consequence of that prediction. Fuck, I am letting it demoralize me. No. Stop, it's getting worse.
No.
Literally writing her thoughts out word for word.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see how thinking about Roko's Basilisk in this way would make you start spiraling.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
And especially when you already believe in all these other ideologies and you're a computer programmer and you're very aware that the possibility is there with AI, it can go downhill fast.
I mean, even as just someone who's like looked into some of these things to some degree, or like there was times in our life where we like got really into certain concepts. Like you can like spiral and lose yourself pretty quick and lose your grasp on reality.
Yes.
And if it goes further, then it can end.
And when you're out on a sailboat, it's pretty tough to touch grass.
That's what I was going to say.
Right.
Is like on top of all this, she's barely sleeping on a sailboat that she cannot really sleep in.
Yeah.
And with a woman, she doesn't know who's talking to herself 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the most
ideal situation.
No.
Especially for Ziz.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like being in jail. Honestly. The space.
Oh, yeah. Like
the space and you're isolated out on this boat, you know?
Especially like with a roommate and
right.
stuff. Yeah. Ziz said that these thoughts about the basilisk would leave her sobbing in bed, and at one point she even contemplated suicide. However, during these obsessive thought sessions regarding the basilisk, she realized that most of its power came from the thought of it itself. And more so, she even thought Roko's basilisk could be good. She imagined that a truly perfect, quote, AI god would reflect rational good qualities and punish the bad ones, not that it would simply torture those who didn't bring it into creation.
This is funny. I just Googled Roko's Basilisk. The first result is Wikipedia, and then the second is Reddit. And the top post here is, Roko's Basilisk is pretty ridiculous. This is my take on it. Literally the second result that comes up for it.
Although yesterday I was thinking about it a lot, and then it kind of like spooked me.
Yeah, it got to you?
I was like, what if, like for a sec, I was like, what if it's true? Now we're all screwed, all four of us.
That's one, and whoever watches the episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I know I've said this many times, every time I talk about Stitch Fix, but this is the main reason I love it so much. I hate shopping in person. I hate the mall. I hate the whole experience. I hate trying to find your size. Sometimes they don't have it in stock. You know, it's just such a bad experience. The dressing room, the lighting, it all kind of feels like a bit of a personal attack. But with Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget, and they do all the shopping for you. It could not be more convenient, especially if you're someone who has a busy life and, you know, fashion and clothing shopping just isn't something you want to spend your time on. Shopping and figuring out your style can just be overwhelming. And when it comes to getting dressed, I don't even know where to start some days. But that's why I love having a Stitch Fix stylist. And I've had Stitch Fix for so long now, probably 4 or 5 years. And my stylist really gets me at this point. She knows what's going to work for me, and I get the pieces that make me feel great. And it's a real confidence boost. I just give my stylist my size, my style, my budget preferences, and I order boxes when I want and how I want. There's no subscription required, which is really awesome. And she sends me just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips, which I certainly need since I have no sense of style at all. And then I keep what I love and I send back the rest in a prepaid mailing envelope. And it's just so easy. And the best part is my stylist has gotten to know me so well that the fit is flawless. I don't know how she does it, especially as my body has changed in the last couple years, but she has. She just gets me. It's like having my own personal style support person. And I also want to point out that it was super convenient to have when I was pregnant. My body was changing like pretty much on a monthly basis, and they have like a whole maternity setup.
They also have Stitch Fix for kids.
Yeah, they do, which is great.
So you can get your kids looking sharp.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, like I said, the best part, guys, no stores, no crowds, no stress, just personalized looks that you're going to love. And Stitch Fix just makes it all so easy. Personal styling for everyone. Get started today at stitchfix.com/milehigher. That's stitchfix.com/milehigher. So between thoughts of the basilisk and conversations with Gwen, they could create their own philosophy based on rationalism, which would become known as Zizianism. though she never officially called it that. Using the framework of rationalism, Ziz decided that all people were made up of two cores, which is a concept taken from the show Steven Universe. My sister's a big fan of Steven Universe, so she's kind of explained it to me, but it's like very complicated and in-depth. From what I understand, really beautiful show.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful show. It's one of those like kid shows that a lot of adults can kind of latch onto, just because, I mean, it's extremely LGBTQ friendly. It's very positive. The music, some people like it.
There's like elements of crystals and planets.
Yeah. So for them, the crystals are their cores, and that kind of decides their given superpowers.
Okay.
But you can also meld cores and so that Ziz takes that concept and brings it into humanity.
Yeah. And makes it whack as fuck.
Mm-hmm. It's also interesting too, because when I think of cores, I think of computer processors.
Right.
Because computer processors contain a number of different cores. So there's like single core processors, dual core. For a long time now, it's like up to octa core. So as computers get more powerful, their processors gain more cores.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't understand. But anyway, in Ziz's world, these cores were either good, meaning that side of you reflected only good qualities, or non-good, which reflected both neutral and evil qualities. Now, most people, according to her, are a combination of good and non-good cores, which is, I think, a concept we can all agree with, that we all got a little good and a little non-good. That's kind of what makes up a human, right? But a fair number of people are double non-good. But it's incredibly rare for someone to be double good. But luckily enough, guys, Ziz was a double good.
Thank God.
Big slay for her. Not only that, but Ziz believed that those cores were located physically within your body and referred to them as your left and right cores. And this became important when an individual attempted to map out which ideas and ethics came from which core. If you had an evil quality, like not being vegan, that might come from your left non-good core, whereas your right core might be good.
Now, Ziz believed that if you had at least one good core, the other non-good core could be identified and corrected through mental tech developed by Gwen, known as Unihemispheric sleep. What the fuck is that? What is Unihemispheric sleep? Well, fuck if I know. I don't think any of us know.
Nobody knows.
Yep.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Although anything that involves sleeping is very appealing to me.
It's basically like, honestly, if we could do this, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be into it.
You shut down only half your brain?
Yeah, but then the rest could be here, but maybe we'd half of it would be sleeping.
And like getting a little nap?
Yeah.
Well, apparently Gwen had done a talk on it during CFAR's 2017 alumni retreat, but it's unclear if she demonstrated it or she just blabbed about it. We don't know. A website called Zizians.info, which is not made by a Zizian, describes it as a technique where the individual leaves one eye open while closing the other and focusing on a fixed object in the room. And eventually the hemisphere associated with that closed eye would go nighty-night, go to sleep. And the individual would be able to identify the qualities of the awake hemisphere and core associated with it. Makes no sense. If someone wanted to correct their left non-good core, they'd put their right hemisphere to sleep and speak out loud about the qualities associated with the non-good hemisphere until they could reason with it with decision theory. Sounds fun. Sounds like a good time. But let's be clear. The science says it's impossible to do this. You can't just put one side of your brain to sleep, people, while the other remains awake. It has not been done. And it is scientifically impossible. But with mental tech, anything is possible. But what this can do, especially if you do the practice for long enough, is give the body a false sense of rest instead of actual sleep. So eventually inducing psychosis if done for long enough. A Zizian who's not involved with the eventual crimes disputed this claim, saying that the tech was only done for 15 minutes at a time and did not replace actual sleep. What's the point of all this? Again, Ziz's ultimate goal was to save the world. Very confused at in what way.
Big goal. Big goals. At least that's gone for her. She's ambitious.
Yeah, that's one way of saying it. That's one way of saying it. I mean, she, at the time, believed that her worldview was objectively good and that people should identify their good and non-good traits before the coming of the Basilisk. At this point, Ziz believed that the Basilisk would be good. and not a, quote, evil god that must be fought, but rather an arbiter of justice. Ziz believed that ultimately saving the world would be a, quote, vegan Nuremberg. Ziz believed that every non-vegan, non-good person would be implicated in these trials and ultimately punished by the Basilisk, which make sense.
So Ziz stopped going to CFAR meetups because, quote, talking with Gwen was better. Shortly thereafter, their conversations became of interest to those who read about their beliefs on Ziz's blog. And one of those people was a trans woman named Fluttershy, named after the My Little Pony character. That's like the cutest name, Fluttershy. It kind of sounds like, what's that?
Butterfly?
No.
Shutterfly?
Shutterfly. Yeah, the company that like the photo books and
Shutterfly.
shit. Anyway, while Ziz thought that Fluttershy was at least partially good based on their first meeting because she was a vegetarian, Ziz soon decided that she was evil. Fluttershy was evil. And why did Ziz decide this? Probably because Gwen took a liking to Fluttershy and Ziz got jealous. On her blog, Ziz describes how she once returned to the sailboat and she found Gwen and Fluttershy hanging out alone. And they tried to tell Ziz about this new concept they were working on regarding water bending. But Ziz basically told them that they were stupid. Then, according to Ziz, quote, at some point I habitually made a Darth Sidious impression croaking to Gwen, my young apprentice.
Young apprentice.
Fluttershy said I was consciously grabbing more status than I deserved and I needed to be punished. She shouted something I forget. Was it "fuck you" at me? With a whole lot of bile in her voice. I don't like that. I need to start using that bile in her voice.
I know. I like bile.
Bile, yeah. Mm-hmm. Somehow, it actually hurt, especially right after she returned to apparently civil tones and said, there, I'd be punished. Now, while Fluttershy isn't spoken about for a while, she becomes very important to awareness surrounding the Zizians in 2021. However, it was during this time that Ziz had another brilliant idea. Again, her end goal was saving the world, which she believed could be achieved by earning to give. So she had a new startup idea. She decided that while many rationalists worked in tech and had enough money to afford Bay Area rent, many, like her and Gwen, were broke and unable to afford housing on the land.
So she had a really good idea. Let's buy a bunch of boats and then charge rationalists just over the marina fees to live on them. And her idea behind this was creating the rationalist fleet. Don, don, da, don, don, da, don. You know, not similarly to the imperial fleet. But this immediately generated some interest within CFAR. Like, oh, that kind of sounds kind of cool. bunch of us out on boats, sweet, living cheap. So Ziz and Gwen looked at a bunch of different sailboats, motorboats, some smaller vessels. However, Ziz thought the ship, aside from Gwen's in the rationalist fleet, needed to be large enough to house multiple members. That's when Ziz saw a World War II era tugboat named Caleb for sale in Ketchikan, Alaska. Ziz wrote on Facebook, quote, who wants to drive a tugboat from Alaska to the San Francisco Bay? Expenses will be covered. It will take 3 years. No, she didn't say 3 years, but tugboats don't go very fast. There's a reason for that, because they're tugging.
Thank you, Josh.
Well, if you've ever seen a tugboat, they
do be tugging.
They're built to tug, man. They're built to tug.
Thank you.
Tug bigger boats, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Tugboat.
Say that one more time.
This episode is brought to you by tugboats. But how would these expenses be covered, since Ziz and Gwen were apparently broke and unemployed? Well, they had received an investment from Daniel Powell, a Navy veteran and computer science PhD candidate who had met Ziz via Less Wrong forum. Ziz, Gwen, Daniel, and 2 other anonymous crewmates picked up Caleb, the tugboat, on July 20th, 2017, and set sail for San Francisco. A few days into the voyage, one of the members posted a YouTube video of the ship to the song, one of the best songs ever, I'm on a boat, man, by the Lonely Island crew.
We can't play the song. I'll sing it for you guys while we watch the clip.
I wish we knew more about this trip, because I'm sure it was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. Let's watch the clip.
Yeah.
All right, Kendall, hit us.
Oh, shit. Get your towels ready. It's about to go down. Everybody in the place hit the fucking deck and stay on your motherfucking toes. We got this. Let's go. I'm on a boat. Yeah, I'm on a boat. Everybody look at me because I'm sailing on a boat. Take a good hard look at the motherfucking boat. I'm on a boat, motherfucker. Take a look at me. Straight floating on a boat on the deep blue sea. Busting 5 knots, wind whipping at my coat. You can't stop me, motherfucker, because I'm on a boat. Take a picture trick. I'm on a boat, bitch. You drinking Santan Sham because it's so crisp. I got my swim trunks and my flippy floppies. I'm flipping burgers. You can't go straight flipping copies. I'm riding on a dolphin, doing flips and shit. The dolphin splashing, getting everybody all wet. But this ain't SeaWorld. This is real as it gets. I'm on a boat, motherfucker. Don't you ever forget. I'm on a boat, yeah. It's going fast and I got a nautical theme, passionate acting. I'm the king of the world on the boat like Leo. If you're on the shore, then you're sure not meal. Get the fuck up. This boat is real. Fuck land. I'm on a boat, motherfucker. Motherfucker. Fuck trees and climb buoys, motherfucker. I'm on the deck with my boys, motherfucker. The boat engine make noise, motherfucker. All right, that's it. Anyways, you can see though. Shout out to Andy Sandberg. We can just let this play through there while you keep reading.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I can keep singing.
Well,
never
no,
see the day.
We're good. Thank you. That beautiful rendition.
I believe me when I say I fucked a mermaid. Yeah. Anyways.
All right.
Shout out to T-Pain too.
Yes.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
He made that
I
song.
love that man.
Beautiful.
Goddamn. The voice of an angel.
Beautiful. Well, as you can see, it's in pretty rough condition there. It's constantly leaking oil, and it pitched to one side. And more than all of the mechanical issues, Ziz was on board and making things very difficult. Dan, who was on the boat, said, quote, Ziz led me to believe that she had established contacts in the Bay Area and that it'd be easy for us to at least get a slip, if not one that was approved for overnight use. But as it turns out, when we were coming through the inside passage from Alaska, it was revealed that we did not have a place to arrive. So, now we're trapped on this boat.
Motherfucker.
Yeah.
Also, I just need to point out this one clip right
I
here.
forgot he did that.
I know, me too. Wait for it. I didn't fuck a mermaid.
Oh my God.
Well, you suck then.
Sad.
How
face.
embarrassing. Hey, at least they're having a little fun.
Yeah, this clip makes it seem not so bad.
Yeah.
But then, there's also photos that an anonymous person took while on board. And if you look through these, this kind of gives you the actual idea of what this boat was like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not great.
But one of the anonymous crew members also said, quote, Ziz was a little on the creepy side, but well below the scary threshold. Okay. Okay. They also said Ziz was just more confident than I thought she had the right to be, and she was abrasive about it. I'm sure other members on board were very unhappy to hear there was nowhere to park the boat to dock it when they got there.
Yeah, that's probably, especially since this voyage took over a month to do.
Wait.
Y'all didn't think about that part of it?
We're going to have to just anchor and then swim? What are we doing here?
So 4 weeks into the voyage, Daniel deboarded in Washington and flew back to his home in New Mexico. He completely cut off contact with Ziz and reportedly sank tens of thousands of dollars into the Rationalist fleet project and recouped none of it. That fucking sucks. And then 2 other Rationalists deboarded in the Bay Area, and soon enough, it was just Ziz and Gwen again, alone on the boat. And they illegally docked it in Half Moon Bay, about 30 minutes south of San Francisco. And they tried to upkeep the boat. However, it was still constantly leaking oil, and it slowly pitched to one side. So to balance it out, Ziz and Gwen purchased an anchor from a man named Curtis Lind. I love Curtis, I just have to say before we go any further. But at this point, Curtis was a man in his late 70s who cared deeply for the Bay Area's boat community. He often spent his free time cleaning the beaches and befriending those involved. And Curtis was, quote, taken by the tugboat and became very interested in Ziz and Gwen. Curtis had been involved with shipping as an occupation, but was considering retiring as he reached his 80s. And this is Curtis discussing what it was like meeting Ziz and Gwen. And note, he does misgender them often, although I don't think he had any bad intention behind it. He is 80 years old.
I believe at the time of this interview, he was 82 as well.
Yeah.
He's just an old man.
Yeah.
And based on his actions,
yeah,
he seems like he was genuinely trying to help them.
Right.
Yeah, he was very kind to them. Okay, so he said, and they came to me because they needed an anchor, because they were dragging anchor. They were anchored out because that's a cheap way to go. And so I sold them an anchor, and they came and asked different questions and this and that. And over a period of time, I found out that they were guys changing to women. And so, I got to be pretty friendly with some of them, friendly enough that I took one of them to a Walmart to buy his first bra. And he came out and showed me and asked my thoughts and, all of that.
And it wasn't just Curtis who was interested in Ziz. Her posts on Less Wrong and her blog post regarding the Rationalist fleet made a big splash at CFAR. Plus, in November of 2017, Gwen displayed her sleep tech at CFAR alumni gathering. While I don't know exactly what it was, they soon had a small following. Ziz and Gwen were joined in the real world by Emma Borhanian, who worked at Google, and somnolence Logencia, who we'll refer to as Somni from here on out. Through her blog, Ziz met Jessica and Michelle Zajko, along with her roommate and also potential partner, Alice Monday. Michelle was the daughter of wealthy landlords in Pennsylvania and had started interacting with Ziz's blog as a troll, but eventually she started becoming a follower. Jessica said that she had a psychotic break following her interactions with Ziz and experiments with Gwen's sleep tech. Ziz was apparently, quote, pressing her for information, though we're unsure what that information was even about. Also, Ziz began interacting with a Polish user named Maya Pasek. Maya had visited the Bay and joined CFAR, but preferred Ziz's philosophy. Commenting on one of Ziz's blog posts, she said, quote, I just want to marry you already. Through experiments with unihemispheric sleep, Maya identified one of her cores as good and the other as non-good. In an attempt to fix that non-good core, Maya used the sleep tech to isolate that hemisphere. However, she learned that her non-good core was predisposed to suicide. Maya wrote on her blog Squirrel in Hell, quote, this might be important for future reference, e.g. to put a lower bound on how long I've been thinking about this. If I commit suicide or spend my life on some altruistic pursuit too hastily, I wish to have pre-registered my suicide and also have made it clear that it was not a fluke, accident, failure of rationality.
And unfortunately, on February 27th, 2018, Maya Pasek did commit suicide. In Ziz's blog post titled, Good Group and Pasek's Doom, Ziz wrote, quote, Pasek's RH, right hemisphere, was suicidal over pains of being trans, amplified by pains of being single female in a bi-gender head, amplified by their left hemisphere's unhealthy attitude, which had been victorious in the culture we generated. They downplayed the suicidality a lot. I said the thing was a failed effort. We had our answer to the startup hypothesis. The project as planned didn't work. Pasek disappeared, presumed to have committed suicide. Now, it has been misreported that Maya was with Ziz at the time of her suicide, but she was actually in Poland. And now that we've quoted extensively from Ziz's blog, you may be wondering how anyone understands what she's saying, let alone follows her teachings. It seems to be similar to the Manson family, where to the average person, these ramblings sound like nonsense, but those who think they understand it, especially when they're in a vulnerable state, it brings them even closer as they believe they are, quote, in on it. And according to Zizians.info, quote, this jargon serves multiple purposes. An important one is that it separates Zizians from others. The cost to read and understand sincerely is substantial, and most people are not willing to pay it. Another is to warp the beliefs of people who use it. The connotations and effect of Ziz's jargon encode her moral beliefs about the world separated from the quality of reasoning used to produce them. By offering language that reinforces these judgments, Ziz creates conditions where even engaging with the beliefs of her followers requires the repetition and reinforcement of their frame.
Which I think is like very true. Even just me reading her posts over and over and over again, you do kind of get inundated in her world. And
yeah.
It doesn't make sense, but you start being like, I'm a smart guy. I should understand this.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, no, I can connect it. It does make sense. It does. When in reality, none of it does. But
right.
It serves this weird purpose where suddenly you feel like I'm chosen.
Yeah,
I get this stuff.
Yeah,
no
I can
one
follow
else.
along.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
However, the next year remained pretty quiet for the small Zizian community. Ziz and Gwen abandoned Caleb sometime in 2019, and it's still slowly sinking off the coast of Half Moon Bay to this day.
It's so wild.
Gwen had sold her sailboat, and they spent most of 2018 and 19 living in box trucks fixed up by Somni and Gwen, who also wrote extensive blog posts about making a box truck livable. In November 2019, Curtis Lynn offered them to come move on to his lot in downtown Vallejo. Curtis had retired from the shipping industry and decided to turn his lot into an area where artists could park their trucks and live for cheap. Curtis reportedly only charged around $200 a month per truck and lived on the lot himself. 2 of the box trucks that the Zizians lived out of on Curtis's property were registered in Vermont and perhaps were purchased by Michelle Zajko, though this is unconfirmed. However, the Zizians would make headlines for the first time later that month. The annual CFAR. You're tired of hearing about CFAR yet? I am. Well, this annual alumni reunion was scheduled for November 15, 2019 and would be held in Camp Meeker, an outdoor event space that could accommodate multiple gatherings. At around 3:30 a.m., Ziz sent this email to all CFAR members with a registered email address. It reads as follows. Miri paid out to blackmail over statutory rape, theft of donor funds to deceive donors. CFAR helped cover it up, implemented in part by their president and founder pushing anti-rationality and anti-ethics and perpetrating religious abuse and using anti-trans feminist memes as a tool for gaslighting. This is enough institutional betrayal to make anyone flinch into betrayal blindness. But that, along with too big to fail, turns our only hope of survival into the fucking Catholic Church in the first place. If you do not want to die, you need to learn how to escape containment. You need to learn TDT, or timeless decision theory, that isn't fake or bounded in applicability even when everyone's lying to you about it or the cycle will repeat. Miri and CFAR started out as SIAI, an organization once functional enough to halt and pivot to AI alignment from accelerationism. They rotted, and this was furthered by preserving the institution over the things that birthed it, the spark of magic in actually rationality, thinking better. Magic enough for e.g. being able to talk out of an AI box. If you do not want to die with this plague consuming our world, then turn your hopes back to the hard-to-find things that generated these institutions that no longer deserve them. What the fuck?
I know, dude. These are so confusing to read.
Basically just throwing a bunch of shade, making accusations at CFAR and its founders.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like an attempt to get anybody who's on the fence to come join her side.
Yeah. While none of these claims have been confirmed, they are worthy of scrutiny if true. CFAR and Miri are both highly funded nonprofits, and if donor funds were being misused to pay out for blackmail, that would be a massive scandal, obviously. And transphobia in the organization would also be a huge issue, of course, given how many trans people were involved in both CFAR and Miri. Plus, Ziz has gotten into numerous exchanges with Anna Salomon, head of CFAR, over concerns about the direction of the organization. And both Ziz and Gwen had been banned from CFAR events for prior, quote, erratic behavior, not surprising. However, they planned to attend this one anyway. Ziz, Gwen, Emma, and Somni drove a box truck, shuttle bus, and Prius, quite the combo, to Camp Meeker, the event space, and blocked the single road that allowed access to the area. They planned to keep people from entering the area. However, they showed up too late. Plus, unknown to them, a children's group was on the ropes course and was also trapped inside the event space, so that's when it became an even bigger problem. The group before entered the event space wearing, what else? Sith robes and Guy Fawkes
Mask.
Guy Fawkes.
Guy Fawkes.
Yeah, basically the masks that anonymous members usually show up in.
That's what those are called? Okay.
Yes.
They passed out lengthy pamphlets detailing their claims about CFAR and stood motionless to prevent proceedings from taking place. However, an employee of Camp Meeker called the police and falsely reported that they had a gun underneath their robes. And with that, and the fact that they were accidentally imprisoning a group of 24 children, a massive police presence descended on the scene. Several squad cars, a SWAT team, and a helicopter arrived. And the Zizians were combative, not surprising, with law enforcement at first, and resisted arrest by going limp, which is a pattern, as you will see. Eventually, all four were arrested on suspicion of felony child endangerment, false imprisonment, and conspiracy, as well as misdemeanor charges or counts of resisting arrest, wearing a mask while committing a crime, and, of course, trespassing.
Gwen alleged that they suffered police brutality while being arrested and that she and the other Zizians were groped, and naked photos of them were taken without their consent. She continued to say that they were not allowed to speak to their lawyers, and their bail was originally going to be $160,000 higher than usual. Well, the reality was that their bail was set at $50,000, and Emma could post with the assistance from her family only a day after the protest. Somni was released for unknown reasons, likely mental health related. Ziz and Gwen's bail was lowered to $10,000, and they posted bail on the 19th. And we don't know where the money came from, because again, they don't have any money. It's important to note that Ziz stopped posting to her blog around this time, and her last post, The Matrix is a System, is dated 2 days before that CFAR protest and is filled with editing notes about her adding some more information. Around this time, the Zizians became an actual group with an unknown number of members, and Ziz stuck to private Discord servers to discuss her new ideas and philosophies. A few months later, the ex-boyfriend of a Zizian named Octavia published the webpage Zizians.info. and this was the first time the Zizians were named and labeled as a cult. The site was supposed to warn other rationalists from joining the group. In a recent interview, Octavia tried to combat some of what the website said, saying that the sleep tech and allegations that Ziz makes you stop talking to your family were bogus. However, she elaborated and said that you often distance yourself from your family when you turn vegan because they are now, quote, flesh-eating monsters, which this is parodying the language that Ziz used herself.
I'm sure all vegans would agree, you know, you can't associate with anyone who's a flesh-eating monster after that. Family, bye. Anyway, in early 2020, Michelle Zajko and Alice Monday moved to the Bay Area, likely to be closer to Ziz, of course. While we know very little about Alice Monday, Ziz referred to her as, quote, a mentor. And while Michelle and Ziz may have been antagonistic to one another initially, Michelle likely bought some of the box trucks that the Zizians were living out of on Curtis's lot. According to the current tenants of Michelle and Alice's apartment, there's a sticker stuck on the fridge. Just can't get that shit off. And it says, quote, assume this phone is tapped, repeatedly. The current tenants also report that the curtains were stained with blood. Nightmare fuel. But it's also important to note that Ziz became much more unhinged during this time. She told Michelle that she wanted her to kill Alice for 2 reasons. Alice was double evil, as in extra evil cores. And all the Siths had to kill their mentors. When Michelle said she didn't want to, Ziz threatened to kill her. Michelle also started stockpiling weapons and ammunition before she purchased a large plot of land in Vermont. And in May of 2021, Fluttershy, the first Zizian outside of Gwen and Ziz herself, committed suicide. Ziz seemed to take credit for the killing, posting, quote, since posting this, I have been tortured, survived 7 assassination attempts, 3 more attempts to do me permanent bodily harm. 4 people individually decided that they had the sole rights to be my death, love, arch nemesis. I always struggle with that. As if they'd be alone. Accidentally exposed themselves to less than 1/100th of my hell, and 1 committed suicide. Others utterly mentally cracked. No one knows what she meant, by the way, by the assassination attempts or the torture. No idea where that came from.
And the whole death, love, arch nemesis thing seems to come directly from fan fiction writings. And also this whole concept of like Siths have to kill their mentors, you know? Since there seems to be some early jealousy between her and Fluttershy, since Gwen liked Fluttershy so much, it might have been that Ziz made it in her head like, oh, you are my death, love, arch nemesis who needs to die in some way. And so when Fluttershy killed herself, Ziz took that as a victory. That's at least how I read it.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty spot on. So I actually don't know anything about Star Wars. I've never seen it. Or I guess I've seen some, I don't know. I tried to watch the first one. It was too old, which is actually like the 6th or the 5th. I don't know. It's all out of order.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's too much for my brain. But did they kill their mentors? Is that really a Sith thing?
Not. It's not spoken. It's just that Anakin, when he becomes Darth Vader, kills Darth Sidious, who was his mentor, and then Obi-Wan before him cut off his legs. But it's
Janelle's nodding as if she knows this.
Actually, I have watched some Star Wars movies.
Oh, have you?
I have, because
wow.
My brother was really, really into it, and so I have seen a handful of them.
Oh, okay. Okay. You a fan?
It's been a while since I watched them, but I actually do remember kind of liking them.
Really?
Yeah. They're just long, so I don't know if I'll be tuning in anytime soon, but
I think I have seen the first 3, which is 4, 5, 6, right?
Those are the only ones worth watching.
I just like Jar Jar Binks.
He's in the I like him too. People hate on Jar Jar, man. But
why? He's so cute. I like
he's
him.
adorable. That's what I call Charlie, Char Char Binks.
Aw.
Who's the green one?
Yoda?
Yeah, Yoda.
Yeah.
Original Yoda, when he looked like a puppet, that's when I was like, I'm out. This is
really?
What the fuck is going on here?
I like Puppet Yoda.
I don't like Puppet Yoda. I like the new adaptation. He's much cuter.
You like the
baby,
CGI
you mean Baby
version?
Yoda?
Yeah.
Or
the newer version.
Right.
Be careful.
Yeah, I know the Star Wars.
Star Wars.
I'm not hating.
Has a very, very dedicated fandom to it. So
I like Yoda. Can we all agree the puppet is fucking creepy?
we can all agree that since Disney bought the rights, it's
crap.
It's gone downhill.
Is that when he became AI version? Or okay, just ignore me. This is pointless.
It's okay. Star
Moving
Wars
on.
is pointless. Star Wars is pointless.
Oh,
Sorry.
You're the one that's gonna get the
Sorry.
hate.
Man, I'm honestly surprised you think that, because with Peace and Love, you're kind of into some
Yeah,
nerdy
Mr.
things
Gene
sometimes.
I
Wolf.
love like
I know.
sci-fi stuff.
I love sci-fi. I think Star Wars is it's of a time.
I
It's-
kind of like it. I think it's like has some good messages from
I-
what I can remember.
I agree. I think people
Really does.
who treat it like it's the greatest thing ever made is just like, that's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's stupid, and that's why we should enjoy it.
Okay,
You know, that's
that makes
why
sense.
we
That
should
makes
enjoy
sense. Stupid, therefore we enjoy it.
it. Yes,
do you like Lord of the Rings?
I love Lord of the Rings. So
Okay.
that's the greatest story ever told.
Thank you.
That's a different thing.
All right, then you're.
It is
you're
a
in me and
total on a
Josh's
different
realm.
plane
Mm-hmm.
in every way.
What about Star Trek?
It's okay.
I've never fucked with Star Trek.
I don't know anything about Star Trek.
the
Exactly.
Klingons?
The Klingons.
Just like the guy with the eyebrows, Spock.
You know, I think Star Trek is like true, like fake nerds like Ziz, not fake nerds, but fake smart people like Ziz, like Star Wars. Real nerds like
Yeah, Star Trek,
engineers
yeah.
like Star Trek.
Totally.
Okay,
Yep.
interesting.
Wow.
Maybe I give Star Trek a try.
It's all right.
Try the track.
It's I
Let's try the Trek.
I don't know. I prefer fantasy over sci-fi any day.
That's why Gene Wolfe's the best, because he brings them together.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm. And not a single one of these fucking nerds ever read Gene Wolfe, okay? That's how I know they're not really with it.
Wow,
All right, fair
Ian.
enough.
Well, we're about to talk about how the Zizians filed a lawsuit.
So shut the fuck up, Ian.
So Mile Higher Media does not reflect any of the opinions of Ian.
Ian's going rogue.
Ian is going rogue here.
What does your shirt say?
Is that true, or did you hear it on CNN?
Ooh,
Damn.
Shots fired.
touche.
You know?
Would you also say that for the other mainstream medias?
Yes, let me be clear.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
let me be
careful.
clear, it's not just CNN I feel this way about. And I don't even feel, I'm just wearing the shirt.
I mean, I feel that way, but about all of them.
Yeah, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Except for
The
News
lame
Nation.
stream. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fucking News Nation all day. Brian Enton, the GOAT.
All right, let's get
Can he
back
come back?
to
We need him on the show again.
Let's get back to it because
Yeah,
we're losing
all right.
people.
I have to have a little bit of a brain break with this shit.
All right.
Nope.
Or what
Lock
did I call
in.
it yesterday? Brain bath.
Lock in.
All right. back
Lock in. We're about to get to when shit gets really fucking crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's
It's
actually
sad,
going
scary.
on
Ugh.
recently, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with Curtis Lind. It gets really, really dark. When it comes to cooking and eating, there's one big problem. The cooking part always takes way too long. I'm a very fast eater, so I can get that part done real quick. But the cooking part and the cleanup part has always been a major pain point, especially with other meal kits out there. But all of that has changed thanks to Hungry Root. It's the easiest way to eat healthy and eat such delicious meals night in, night out. I love Hungry Root. I'm a huge fan of it. They have completely changed the game for our household. I love that Hungry Root's meals are so easy to put together. We're talking 2, 3, 4 steps max to get a meal on the table. And their recipes are absolutely delicious. The foods are sourced from all really high quality places. It's nutritious and it's easy to achieve those diet and health goals with Hungry Root. They have something for everybody, all sorts of lifestyles, from anti-inflammatory, gut-friendly, gluten-free or dairy-free, high protein and more. You know me, I love my protein. So Hungry Root has got me covered. You know, I'm trying to think of I had a miso glazed salmon that was absolutely delicious. It was wild caught salmon, believe it or not. Really, really good. None of that weird fishy taste to it. I've had sous vide steak from there the other night, which was absolutely delicious. They have great soups, which you don't even have to make. You just heat them up and it's ready to go. And you just discover so many cool brands that you never had heard of before. Grass-fed ground beef from right here in Colorado. Absolutely delicious. There's no high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, or preservatives in any of Hungry Root's food. They only source top quality meat and seafood free of hormones and antibiotics. And all of Hungry Root's recipes can be made in just 15 minutes or less. And they have over 15,000 recipes shipped each week. There's something for every taste and nutrition experience. You're going to love Hungry Root as much as we do. Take advantage of this exclusive offer for a limited time. Get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go Go to hungryroot.com/milehigher and use code milehigher. Please let them know that we sent you. That's hungryroot.com/milehigher, code milehigher to get 40% off your first box and a freedom of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/milehigher, use code milehigher. So in November 2021, the Zizians filed a countersuit against the event space they protested in 2019. However, these legal issues were just scratching the surface of what was about to go down. So the Zizians, they stopped paying rent to Curtis Lind in March 2020 when California placed a moratorium on evictions. However, when that moratorium was lifted in 2021, they still refused to pay rent. So Curtis, he's like, what the fuck, guys? Like, I've already been dealing with you guys long enough.
And I've been cool to you.
Got the cops coming out to the property all the time. You know, it's just, this is a real pain in the ass at this point. For one, even though only the Camp Meeker 4, those 4 people signed leases, up to a dozen unknown people were living at the property at once. Plus, even though this was a shared lot in the middle of downtown Vallejo, most of the Zizians walked around naked, harassed other people living there, constantly talked to themselves, and got the cops called multiple times for domestic disturbances. So
great neighbors.
Yeah. So if you're a landlord, you're like, all right, guys, we gotta figure this out.
But they fucking hate landlords.
Mm-hmm.
So
they're like any authority.
Even a nice landlord who's letting you live there for cheap.
And going with you to shop for bras.
Yeah.
That's so kind.
Well, Curtis had enough. He got a court order for them to pay the rent that they owed, which was around $62,000, and requested that they either pay it or leave. In April 2022, after missing multiple court dates for her countersuit, Gwen committed suicide. However, no body, death certificate, or witness was ever produced. In July of that year, a bounty was placed for people in the Bay Area to find a young woman named Suri Dow. Suri had secretly moved in with Ziz on the lot, cutting off all contact with the outside world.
Then in August, Ziz died herself during a boating accident in the San Francisco harbor. Some of her friends reported to the Coast Guard that she had slipped off the docks and fell into the water, and none of this makes any sense. But they said because it was a clear day and she fell into a relatively shallow area, the Coast Guard did not need to search and just assumed that she had drowned. So it's like, okay, so she fell into a shallow area in clear water on a clear day, and like none of you helped her?
That's what it seems like. And also it's not really sure who of Ziz's friends were there at the time. Maybe even Ziz's sister, who is totally unnamed, was also there. So there's just a ton of confusion surrounding this. So I think when the Coast Guard...
If it even happened.
So I think when the Coast Guard showed up, they were just kind of like, okay. And they're like, all right, I guess she's dead. And because they were like, where the fuck are we supposed to look?
Yeah. And it may sound weird that we're laughing, but it'll make sense later. So a month later, Ziz's parents ended up publishing this obituary in the Fairbanks Daily News Miner. Quote, Jack Amadeus Lasota left our lives but not our hearts on August 19th after a boating accident. Loving adventure, friends and family, music, blueberries, biking, computer games, and animals, you are missed. On November 3rd, 2022, Ziz and Gwen's death were acknowledged in court, and the countersuit was eventually dismissed. However, only a few weeks later, the Zizians were scheduled to be evicted from Curtis Lind's lot. In November of 2022, the Zizians were going to have to leave Curtis's lot. They met with him and requested 2 more months to figure out what they were going to do next. Curtis said he was not going to be having that, can't allow it, because they had harassed him and other tenants. According to Curtis, one of the Zizians pulled out a knife and began pointing it at Curtis in a threatening way. That next day, Curtis bought a pistol. Right call for him. And it's also important to note that there were no other witnesses to this event. A Zizian provided their side of the story, however, they were not present, and some of their statements were untruthful. For one, that the Zizians had countersued Lind, which they didn't, and that Patrick McMillan, another tenant, was ex-CIA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like completely psychosis sort of related. I mean, you notice a lot of these people when they think they're being gang stalked, they're also like, oh, this guy's CIA, that guy's FBI, and being followed. I think it's a similar situation.
Following that trend, for sure.
It's also important to note that Somni started wearing a bulletproof vest leading up to the eviction. The Zizian claimed this was out of fear of Curtis, although they didn't know he had purchased a gun. In all likelihood, this was because she feared that the sheriff was coming to evict them. Given the events of the CFAR protests, they thought, they're going to roll in a bunch of officers, it's going to be this big thing. 2 days before the eviction, November 13th, 2022, Suri Dow knocked on Curtis's door at around 1 a.m. Suri said that the water was leaking into her trailer and that she needed help. Curtis told her she needed to turn the water off, but Suri didn't know how. So Curtis got up and walked with Suri back to her trailer. Curtis said that as he bent over to turn the water off, quote, "I got hit by something. I don't remember anything from then. On the whole side, the right-hand side of my skull was shattered. My nose was shoved over flat, and the next thing I remember standing up with 3 of them right next to me, or around me. And I was bleeding from numerous puncture wounds. I think around 50. I couldn't see out of my right eye, had been punctured 3 times. The back of my neck had some severe cuts like somebody was trying to cut my head off."
Jeez, this poor man.
Oh, so not only had Curtis been stabbed multiple times, but one of the Zizians had driven a samurai sword through his back with the tip sticking out from his chest. When Curtis was finally able to stand again, he pulled out his gun and fired, injuring Somni and killing Emma Borhanian. He then ran to Patrick McMillan's trailer, who called the police in an ambulance at around 1:30 a.m. When Curtis arrived at the hospital, the samurai sword was still sticking out from his chest. And at the age of 80 years old, Curtis survived this attack.
What a badass. I mean, that's just unheard of. Amazing.
Insane.
A samurai sword sticking through his... Imagine being the people in the ER when he arrived and seeing the condition. Oh, my God.
Oh, even like when Patrick McMillan described it, like Curtis knocked on my door and I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
There's a sword sticking out of your chest?
Dude, opening that door. God. Yeah, there's a picture of him in the hospital, too. Looks tough. So the pro-Zizian side of the story said that Curtis, of course, they tried to say that he was the first to attack after an argument broke out and that he killed Emma first. However, this doesn't explain the dozens of stab wounds and samurai sword part of the story. It also doesn't account for the strange items left behind at the scene. For one, tubs of lye were left behind in the Zizian trailers. And according to ex-Zizians, Ziz had posted in their Discord chats about disposing of a body with lye. Ultrasound machines were also left behind in the box trucks, though their purpose is unknown. We also have no idea how the fuck they got ultrasound machines, although we sort of have a theory.
Yeah, there's a potential that Michelle Zajko, because she worked in hospitals, she's the only one with like any sort of connection to get that kind of medical equipment.
Mm-hmm.
But still, we don't know what they were using it for. Some people have theorized that it was for taking estrogen. However, ask any trans woman in the world and they don't need an ultrasound to inject estrogen.
Right. Yeah, it makes no sense. Yeah. I'm so curious what they were using them for, though. And were they stolen? Who knows? So wild. Somnolence Legencia and Suri Dow were both arrested at the scene and charged with attempted murder of Curtis Lind and the first-degree murder of Emma Borhanian. If someone is killed while a crime is being committed, the perpetrators are charged with the murder under California law. However, there was a twist. While Suri and Somni were the only 2 to be arrested, around 4 or 5 additional people were staying in the Zizian trailers during the attack. And according to the police who responded to the scene, 2 of those other people were Gwen Danielson and Ziz. So they're not dead. Surprise. Turns out both of them had faked their deaths when they had died earlier in the year. In fact, it was so unclear about how they survived that Gwen being alive wasn't even confirmed until just a few weeks ago, sometime in January.
January was the last time Gwen spoke to her father.
It's unclear why they did this, whether it was in preparation for the attack on Curtis Lind, skipping out on court dates, or for another reason. Ziz's parents had published that obituary in Fairbanks, so it's unclear if they were convinced by the fake death or in on it too. Ziz was handcuffed and held at gunpoint while Gwen was allowed to walk free. On the way to police headquarters, Ziz faked a medical emergency and was rushed to the ER. After doctors cleared her, she was allowed to walk free. However, Ziz called Suri and Somni while they were in jail. The San Francisco Chronicle reported that after Ziz was recorded telling them to escape, and quote, in February 2023, Somni tried to escape again, prosecutors said. When deputies took her to a Vallejo courthouse for a hearing, Somni requested a wheelchair. As the deputy went to get one, Somni allegedly ran out of the transport truck but got caught at a cyclone fence. In July 2023, Suri Dow tried to escape a jail cell, records show. Prosecutors said that Suri pretended to be choking and having a seizure. After officers determined the prisoner was fine and left the cell, Suri ran toward the door. The closing door pinched her hand. Officials said it required hospital treatment. However, when Ziz disappeared, Gwen apparently hid from Ziz. According to Gwen's father, he said, quote, we are dealing with highly intelligent people who know how to track somebody down if they want to. If any one of them wants to do somebody harm, they're going to do anything they can to track them down. According to him, Gwen split from the group after the Curtis Lind attack and remained under the radar. However, this wouldn't be the last time that Ziz was detained by police and then released.
So throughout 2021 to 2022, Michelle Zajko purchased properties in Vermont, large amount of weapons and ammunition, and tactical gear. And she had been splitting her time between the Bay and the East Coast. It's also important to note that Michelle was extremely intelligent and successful, and she wrote a paper on mRNA when she studied for her master's degree. According to her LinkedIn quote, "I graduated from Temple University's Bioinformatics Master's Program with an undergraduate degree from Cabrini University. I've interned at NASA's Gene Lab, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and previously did a 1-year internship in genome annotation." She and Alice had both changed their residences to Vermont. However, it's unclear how involved Alice was in the events that were about to transpire. She was also living with a man named Daniel Blank, who was reported missing in early December of 2022. It's also important to note that many Zizians believe that Michelle's parents were, quote, comic book villain level abusive towards her. They point to Michelle's blog, which is called Plum of Discord, for proof. However, the only evidence of abuse written about in the blog has to do with them not respecting her veganism. However, according to rationalists who knew Michelle and Ziz, Michelle's parents had several $1 million in assets that Michelle, as their only child, would be the only beneficiary of if they were to pass away. Other rationalists said that Ziz expressed interest in this inheritance, although that is unconfirmed, but certainly would make sense, right?
However, on New Year's Eve 2022, Richard and Rita Zajko were murdered in their home in Pennsylvania. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, quote, police soon learned that on that same day, Rita Zajko texted her daughter using the encrypted app Signal. The text was, quote, about savings bonds for which it is believed the daughter was the intended recipient. Michelle Zajko did not respond. Investigators also discovered the Ring doorbell camera footage captured by the neighbor across the street. The video starting at 11:29 p.m. showed that an unknown vehicle pulled into the Zajko's curved driveway adjacent to the front door and turned off its headlights. A minute later, the screams could be heard from the surveillance feed. 24 seconds elapsed between the person yelling, "Mom," and "Oh my God, oh God, God." Their autopsies from January 5th, 2023 revealed that Rita had been shot in the back of the head and Richard had been shot in his temple through his right hand. Investigators were able to retrieve a jacketed hollow point bullet from the scene. The same day, January 5th, police traveled to Vermont to interview Michelle. She said she had been home with her roommate, Daniel Blank, and had not returned to Pennsylvania since the COVID pandemic. Police observed her pistol, a 9mm Smith & Wesson. However, they did not have a warrant to seize it, and they later believed that it could have been used in the murders. She had purchased the weapon 11 months before her parents' murders, along with ammunition that matched the hollow point found at the scene. So you put 2 and 2 together, It's possible.
On January 12th, Michelle informed her grandmother's caretaker that she would not be attending her parents' funeral as she was not in Pennsylvania. However, that was a lie, as she had rented a room at the Candlewood Suites in Chester, Pennsylvania. She had rented room 218 while Daniel Blank rented room 111. Police obtained a warrant to search both Michelle's hotel room and home in Vermont to retrieve the weapon, as well as Daniel's room and her vehicle. And while they weren't able to find the Smith & Wesson pistol, police did find an envelope containing $40,000 underneath the driver's seat in Michelle's car. And when police entered Daniel's room, they discovered Ziz hiding in the bathroom. And according to police, while Daniel just went ahead and put his hands behind his head and cooperated, Ziz laid on the ground completely limp with her eyes shut. This reminded me of our daughter when she, she closes her eyes and she thinks we can't see her. That was that move,
yeah,
right?
Yep.
Pretty fucking awesome, honestly. Police carried her to the squad car because she was, limp. And then she faked another medical emergency before she was ultimately booked on obstruction charges and a warrant from California for skipping out on court dates related to the Curtis Lind attack and the CFAR protest as well. And the only item that Ziz had on her person was a cell phone wrapped in aluminum foil.
Amazing.
Right on brand. Yeah, let's actually take a minute here. Look at the smug shot, guys. If you're watching, They literally had to hold her head up. Imagine I wonder if the person who did that had ever had experience doing that
I doubt
before.
it, man. I doubt it.
Or I guess maybe there's people who have been, intoxicated or something that they kind of have to hold up, but
And there were posts on her blog about, and this was, of course, all of the posts on her blog were before she ever had police interactions. But she did talk about, like, you know, even when with her first roommate / landlord, the best thing to do was just to go limp. And just, that's how you don't cooperate with police, is just you play dead, basically.
I'm going to start just applying this in my life. When I don't want to work or get out of bed, just go limp.
Play dead.
Just lay on the floor.
It's really like a toddler.
Yeah. It's honestly kind of a genius move.
Till they zip tie you and
Yeah.
haul you around like a hog.
It's just so funny. God, the fuck?
Well, on top of all of that, other Zizians were implicated in the Zajko killings. Ophelia Bachholt, who had communicated with the group on Discord, had flown into Pennsylvania from Germany hours before the murders. And according to prosecutors in the case against Suri Dow and Somnolence Logencia, they were both named in their unreleased documents. Ziz's bail was initially $50,000, but once again reduced to $10,000. Who is this judge that keeps reducing her bail?
What the fuck? Are you
Come
like a
on.
secret Zizian over there?
So she was able to post bail again in June 2023, and Ziz's attorney assured the courts that her mother would make sure that Ziz showed up for those trial dates.
And that she wasn't limp.
But nope, she disappeared again. However, there is one more twist in the Zizian story, which happened only a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. In the spring of 2023, Milo Youngblood was questioned by the police for a road rage incident. While driving around at the University of Washington, where they were from, they had pulled over and flashed a gun at another driver for misgendering them. Police questioned Milo, but nothing came of it. Milo and Ophelia Bachholt were new members of the Zizians, and they had joined the group via the Discord. Their friends reported how they disappeared once they started interacting with the group. In July of 2023, Ophelia, Milo, and another unknown person moved together to North Carolina. In May of 2024, Milo's parents reported them missing to the Seattle police. Ophelia was in the United States on a work visa set to expire in 2025. And then on November 5th, 2024, Milo and a Zizian named Adair applied for a marriage license in the state of Washington. Now, Adair was well known in the Rationalist circles and lived in the Bay Area. While he had dated many members on the outskirts of the Zizians and maybe even groomed another young rationalist, it's unclear when he officially joined the group himself. Then, starting on January 14th, 2025, Ophelia and Milo went house shopping in Vermont, very close to where Michelle Zajko owned property. While they went to a few house showings, they kept having to reschedule with their realtor, who was unsure if the two wished to buy property.
Well, and on top of all that, the two of them were being surveilled by the Vermont police and the FBI. You see, Milo and Ophelia were walking around this small town in Vermont with weapons visible. And Vermont is an open carry state, so not illegal. But, I mean, if you're dressed in full tactical gear, weapons out, this is going to freak people out. And the manager at the hotel they were staying at was indeed freaked out by them. The FBI questioned them in the days leading up to January 20th, but ultimately released them as they hadn't yet committed a crime. However, going back to Vallejo, on January 17th, Curtis Lind was murdered in broad daylight, sadly. Curtis Lind, who was 82 at the time, was outside his lot near a few auto body shops where multiple employees were outside on lunch, when employees noticed a strange man pacing and hanging out on the metal barriers near the roadside. At one point, the man went up to the workers after he saw a drone fly overhead and asked if they were controlling it with their phones. At this point, they believed the man was just having a mental health episode. However, when Curtis walked out of his lot, the man approached him and pretended to hug him. Then, in full view of the employees, the strange man stabbed Curtis multiple times before he ran down the street covered in blood.
God, it is so...
Poor Curtis, man.
I know.
God.
It's heartbreaking, dude. He'd been through so much, such a good guy. I mean, as far as I know, but just horrible, horrible.
The employees, quote, saw a short man with long hair and black clothing, covered in blood, run past their shop. They watched as the assailant returned to the scene a second time, walked up to the bleeding Curtis Lind and slashed his throat.
Oh, God.
Curtis Lind, if you remember, was a sole witness in the trial against Suri and Somni, which was supposed to start later this year.
Then on January 20th, back in Vermont, the FBI watched as Ophelia and Milo bought a large amount of aluminum foil from a local Walmart and wrapped unknown objects before driving south on I-95. At around 3 p.m., 3 Border Patrol cars pulled over Ophelia and Milo's Prius. Agent David Maland approached their vehicle and conducted a routine immigration check. And it's also important to note that this was on Trump's inauguration day. After Maland inspected Ophelia's expired visa, Milo exited the car from the passenger seat and shot him multiple times with hollow point rounds. God, just so brutal. And the other agents returned fire, killing Ophelia and injuring Milo. Agent Maland was declared deceased right at the scene. Horrible. After law enforcement searched their Prius, they found a stockpile of hollow point rounds, riot helmets, and night vision goggles, and also numerous cell phones wrapped in, what else? Tinfoil. On top of that, the weapon that Milo had used to kill Agent Maland was purchased by Michelle Zajko 1 year earlier. Also important to note that the shooting took place only a few miles away from Michelle's property. On January 24th, law enforcement searched Milo and Ophelia's home in North Carolina, and they said they were looking for one item in particular, though it was unclear what it was. There were also rumors that tubs of lye were found at Michelle Zajko's property in Vermont, though this is also unconfirmed. On January 25th, Adair was arrested and charged with the murder of Curtis Lind. However, for nearly a month, Ziz, Michelle, and Daniel Blank were all on the run.
Then on February 16, 2025, so just a week or so of this episode going up, 2025, Ziz, Michelle Zajko, and Daniel Blank were arrested in Maryland. According to the Associated Press, quote, Ziz, Michelle, and Daniel Blank were arrested by Maryland State Police in Allegheny County for trespassing on private property and obstruction charges. In addition, Michelle is charged with carrying a handgun and resisting arrest, and Ziz is charged with having a handgun in a vehicle. All three were arrested when they approached a resident in Frostburg, Maryland, and asked to park their box truck there for a month. They were openly carrying firearms and ammunition at the time. They are being held without bail, citing flight risks and public safety concerns, and during the bond hearing, Ziz said, quote, I shouldn't be here. I haven't done anything wrong. She also said, quote, might starve to death if you do not intervene. I need the jail to be ordered to have a vegan diet. It's more important than whatever this hearing is. Prosecutor said that of the 4 firearms Michelle purchased in Vermont, 2 of them were used in the Border Patrol shootout. 1 of them was on Michelle's person at the time of the arrest, and the 4th is missing. Milo, Somni, Suri, and Adair all face life in prison if convicted of their charges. Adair posted a public letter to Eliza Yudkowsky, who, we talked about at the beginning for way too long. He was the one who started all this rationalist crap with his stupid Harry Potter fan fiction. In the letter, Adair urged him to commit to veganism. In response, Yudkowsky said, quote, audience should not be a reward for crime. So what's next for the Zizians? Well, for one, it's unclear if Ziz herself will be tried in connection to the other murders. While the prosecuting attorney in Milo's case connected the Border Patrol shooting to the Zizian group, it is not publicly known if they are building a federal case against her and the Zizian group. Currently, she has warrants from California and Pennsylvania for contempt of court charges, in addition to the charges in Maryland that led to her arrest. However, it was confirmed that the FBI is investigating the case. It's unclear if Michelle will be charged with her parents' unsolved double homicide, although it seems likely that the missing 4th firearm is the Smith & Wesson pistol that police observed and believe could have fired the hollow point bullets found at the scene. It's also unclear what Daniel Blank's role in this is, or whether he was an accomplice or just with the Zizians at the time of both crimes. Milo's trial for murder of Agent Maland is scheduled for May 8th. Adair's arraignment for the murder of Curtis Lind is scheduled for February 21st. Somni and Suri's trial for the murder of Emma Borhanian was set to start earlier this year, but with Curtis Lind's murder, it's unclear when it will start. It's also unknown how many members are still in the larger group out there. Since most of the members converse through private Discord channels, we're unsure where they're located and if there are any other plans. The whereabouts of notable Zizians like Gwen and Alice Monday are still unknown, though perhaps they both split from the group and are in hiding like Gwen's father stated. So this is still evolving, still unfolding.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, even by the time this episode goes live, there might be some updates. Maybe we'll have to do another Zizian episode in the future.
I can't wait, man.
Just like on updates and stuff. I want to know how all of this ends. Hopefully it's really coming to an end, considering there are more of them. Scary stuff, dude. And just really, really sad.
So unnecessary.
I know.
Like all the violence is so unnecessary. And I just don't understand how this equals a better future for anybody.
It doesn't. It's so clearly lost the plot.
It just seems like it's spiraled out of control. They're all in too deep at this point.
Yeah.
They all have warrants or are already in jail.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to really make of it.
I
At the end
know.
of the day, it's just
Like, what do you even really say at the end of this?
I mean, it's just like the fact that 8 deaths, including the suicides,
Yeah.
all from fucking Steven Universe fan fiction, basically.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so ridiculous and sad. And the other thing I've noticed that I was talking to you guys about it is that I think a lot of the coverage on this focuses on how they're trans, and they're calling it like a trans death cult or whatever. And it's just very, I don't know, unfortunate to see like this group of clearly extreme people tied to a larger social movement like that, just because the right sees it that way.
Janelle and I were on the phone yesterday talking about that. It's just like, adds more fuel to the fire. And, that's the last thing the trans community needs right now. So that's really unfortunate. When honestly, them being trans really has nothing to do with the cult or the story or the crimes or any of it. It's such a non-important detail of the story.
If anything, I think like Ziz, in my opinion, Ziz kind of, whether intentionally or not, preyed on trans women simply because like a lot of her teachings of like, identifying certain cores within yourself, that resonates with a lot of trans women who are in the process of transitioning and figuring out who they are as a woman.
Right.
And so it's like when you're in a very vulnerable state like that, there's someone who is visibly trans telling you like, oh, this is how I figured it out. And it's very simple. You just need to put one half of your brain to sleep.
Yeah.
It makes it like, I understand how someone could be pulled in like that. So
yeah.
I don't know. It's just like people need to have more empathy. And the people who are like using the fact that they're trans and committed murders as an excuse to be like, oh, so I'm going to misgender the fuck out of them, make them feel like shut up, man.
Oh, it's so fucking annoying. It's just so lazy.
Right.
And like, I think people think, well, because they did these horrible things, then I can do that. We're not understanding how it hurts the community
as a whole.
Right. It's the same as, I fucking hate Caitlyn Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner, yes. But I'm not going to misgender her or dead name her, no matter how much I dislike her as a person, because it's just hurting the group as a whole. Yeah, a lot of the coverage I've seen on this has been like, it's not that hard.
It's not hard at all.
It's
not that confusing.
polite.
I've heard people be like, it's too confusing, so I'm just going to use their like bio names or whatever. I'm like, it's not confusing at all, really.
No, it's really, I mean, yeah, I didn't feel confused about gender. I didn't even think about gender as we were prepping for this.
Yeah.
The confusing shit is all the Star Wars crap.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's how it is with every cult, though. It's always vulnerable people who, are struggling with some aspect in their life that get taken advantage of and taken into these groups that they think have all the answers, and it ends up sometimes deadly. And, as strange and bizarre these cults are to learn about, it's just the overall tone of it is just sad. It's always just so sad. And obviously mental illness plays a big role in all of this as well. And so there's a part of me, as evil as these people are, that like feels sad for them that they've struggled so much in their life. And it doesn't excuse anything, or, you know what I'm trying to say? It's sad.
It's really sad.
It's overall just horrific, the whole story.
Well, the thing that sticks out to me too is this rise of internet cults. Where this isn't a cult in its traditional form, where, a bunch of people living on a compound. And although to some extent there was members living on Curtis's lot, but the way they operate and the way they communicate is far different than how it used to be, where they'd all like get together in the middle of nowhere, and, the leader would kind of, preach to everybody their ideologies, whereas this is all online.
Right.
And I think fucking Discord needs to fucking get their shit together.
Dude, yeah.
And
Reddit
monitor these private discords to some extent, or have their fucking AI monitor these private discords, because when these dangerous ideologies are leading to people getting murdered, that's a problem. And it's something that could, chances are the plans around this were being circulated on Discord and could have been thwarted if they had actually been monitoring it to some extent. Like, obviously, I don't think all these tech companies should be monitoring their shit, because freedom of speech and blah, 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 and like all,
but just
privacy,
basic terms of service for safety.
But if you're talking about actively murdering somebody, I think that crosses a line.
Yeah, it does.
And it's just like, when these guys are clearly getting weapons and, walking around, they're clearly a threat. And I'm glad it seems like they're starting, they're on law enforcement's radar at this point, and they know what they're capable of, and hopefully they're watching them far more closely than they were before. But it's just, I think some of these platforms have responsibility, and then it goes back to rationalism and the ideologies behind it, and it's not necessarily a liar's fault for coming up with this ideology because somebody took it and then made it extreme, but
which you can do with anything.
You can do it with any ideology, but just, I don't know. I think this is the kind of the new wave of what cults look like in our day and age. Is it originates online, it originates in forums, and
it can happen much quicker nowadays.
And people are more, this ability to be anonymous on these platforms kind of feeds the cultivation of these groups, because they feel like they can hide. And then when you're talking about computer engineering and computer programmers, I mean, they know how to hide their identities, hide their IP addresses, or walking around with their phones wrapped in foil to block signals and stuff. So they're actively evading a lot of the technologies that are in place because they understand the technology better than the average person. And so it kind of creates this very dangerous, tricky situation where, in my opinion, and a lot of people have argued, cyber security and sort of this cyber safety is like the big thing we all need to be concerned with, and what people are doing online, and keeping each other safe, and finding better ways to regulate that. And obviously law enforcement needs to continue investing in technologies and abilities, because it's like, part of me is, if the tech companies have this type of AI, but then law enforcement doesn't, then who's regulating who? And I think the whole concept behind the Zizians is an interesting conversation that needs to be had around AI and around who is going to control this AI as it's developed, because we already know it's there. We already know that Google's AI is extremely advanced, and some whistleblowers have come forward and said it's sentient already, which is scary. And I think there is some level of fear we all should have around it, and some awareness that should be, it should be something that's talked about. And I think for the average person, it feels like it's over our heads and we don't know where to start, right? Like, where do we begin? And people like Elon Musk, who, come out and are like, oh, he warns about the dangers and stuff. But then you look at who he's involved with and who he's connected with. You're like, oh, is he actually somebody we can trust with this issue?
I mean, no. The policies have already been rolled back that were having any, restraint on AI at all. So.
I think we need to, it's going to be a real issue in the coming years, as this continues to unfold. But
yeah,
I hope that they're able to squash this before it gets any worse, and I hope that they they get justice for those that were murdered, because there's just no reason for it. These guys are out of control. They're trying to, I don't even really know what their point is at this point, because the earning to give,
I think
philosophy has gone out the window at this point. And so now what's the philosophy? Now you're just trying to silence people that you've committed crimes against.
Yeah.
So you're just criminals at this point.
Right. Yeah.
You're not carrying this philosophical mission that you were at the beginning.
Yeah.
When there's no need for violence to carry that out. So the minute that they turn to violence is the minute that it ended, that they're not a philosophical group trying to change humanity for the better, like all these other ideologies suggest, but rather they're just a criminal group, criminal enterprise at this point. And so,
see, I think like with Ziz, and it speaks to the issue with rationalism, because again, we talk about, rationalism, these guys are so fucking goofy. It's all coming from Harry Potter, which it is goofy and it's coming from Harry Potter, but also, again, Elon is likely a rationalist himself. So not only has that infected the highest form of government, but also I think when it comes to Ziz and these murders, because she has so publicly stated, I've joined the dark side, the rationalists believe that as long as you can rationalize your actions, they are good. And I think because Ziz is also convinced that she's double good, nothing she does is evil.
Right.
And so therefore murder is justified. I think maybe because I've been just drowning in her writing for 2 weeks now. I think she totally believes that these murders are within her wheelhouse.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
She thinks she can't do bad. You know, nothing she can do is bad because she's a Sith, and Sith just do what they want.
What a dangerous thought to think that you are incapable of doing anything bad.
Right.
You only have a double good core. God, it's scary.
Well,
shit,
and then when you're influencing others to do your bidding for you, that becomes an extremely dangerous situation.
And something we see in cults over and over.
Right.
And over.
Now people are willing to throw away their own lives to do the, dirty work of the leader. And yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how this all unfolds with the trials coming up. And, I hope for appropriate justice at the end of the day.
Yeah, I hope the law comes down on them as hard as possible and, makes an example out of them for others that might be headed down dangerous paths, if that'll even stop them. But there will always be cults. There will always be people like Ziz and the Zizians, all of them, unfortunately.
Yep. That's just way the world is.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild world. More divided than ever, scarier than ever.
But yeah, if you're still with us, you made it.
Thank you.
You made it to the end.
Congratulations. Let's have like a code word for someone to leave as a comment if you made it all the way through.
Info hazard.
Info hazard?
Yeah. Basilisk.
Okay, yeah. Just write as a comment that just info hazard, period.
If you made it to the end. Yeah, let us know your thoughts though.
Try to summarize them into one little YouTube comment.
Let us know your thoughts.
Or like comment throughout. Yeah,
how
we definitely want to hear from you
confused
guys.
are you?
A scale of 1 to 10.
I'm still like a 9.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm definitely 9, maybe 9.5 even. I don't get this much, but crazy.
But yeah.
Big shout out to Ian. Thank you. You did an amazing job of trying to make sense of this mess, this garbage.
I'm so excited. I told you now, when I close out the window with I counted them, 98 tabs open, it's going to feel like crack. It's going to feel so
Have
good.
you done it yet?
No. But I still need to put them all into the paste bin, so I can't do that yet.
Maybe you should just smash the whole laptop. Actually, don't. It's a company
computer.
You
guys bought it for me. Thank you.
You can write on paper from here on out.
Yeah, but thank you guys for joining us. We will be back next week with an uplifting, nice change of pace kind of episode. So look forward to that. And until then, keep on taking your mind a mile higher.